So we asked your Instagram audience to send in some questions in regards to the sermon that you gave on Sunday on protecting your innocence. It's a good sermon. Feels like a monumental sermon. I feel like it was just...
I was like, you know how it's very hard to evaluate your own messages?
Yes.
So very hard. Because it's so much, you evaluate based on how the people responded while you're...
you're like, did they clap? Did they cheer?
Yeah, exactly. Or were they throwing things at me?
Yeah.
And when I got home, Kathy's like, that is the best message I think I've ever heard you preach. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. If you haven't heard it, you got to go listen.
Didn't feel that way, but okay. But yeah, I know it was the right message. Whether it
felt very timely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt like perfect timing.
It's more like a prophetic message than anything else. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we're going to try to answer questions.
We're going to answer some questions.
Oh my gosh.
And you spoke last week kind of on this too, though. I feel like it's been on your heart for a while.
Oh my goodness, it has.
I feel like this sermon wrapped up a lot of thoughts and things the Lord's been speaking to you about into one sermon.
Yeah.
But it's been something that's spilling out.
You know, the heart of the message, which came from a word the Lord gave me that week, protect your innocence. I think it was a week before, actually. It wasn't what some people thought it was, because all I was trying to say is you have your opinions, and the beauty of the body is that because of our experience, our education, all the things that happen in our life, we each have a certain kind of perspective on life. Yeah. And just because we read the same statistics or we read the same book, even the Bible, doesn't mean that we're going to come to the same conclusions. And the beauty of the body is loving each other right where we're at, and having patience with each other and giving honor to one another, and not thinking that we know each other's heart, and finding a place to love people in which we don't agree with, which is a whole bunch of the planet. And that's the heart of the message right there. Like, and everyone's, almost everyone's offended. Everybody's upset, and you can't mention. So that anyway, I just wanted to kind of reiterate like that. That was what I was trying to say.
Yes.
If it didn't come across, that's what I was trying to say.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so some people have sent in some questions.
Okay.
Here we go. Rapid fire.
Here we go.
Ready? Okay.
Yes. No. Yes.
Yes, maybe so. Here we go.
I'm trying to answer them prophetically.
Okay. So first question. Does forgiveness mean not judging them for what you forgave them for?
Well, it depends on what we're calling judgment, because really there's two kinds of judgment, and we're not going to get into Greek and Hebrew on it. But one judgment is I make a decision about right and wrong. And we're making those hundreds of times a day. Like, should I turn? No. Yes. It's, somebody, goes through a red light. I make a judgment that they did wrong.
Right.
That's one kind of judgment. And when we're talking about judgment, most of the time we're actually talking about that kind of judgment, because that's healthy. Right. We have to know right from wrong. We have to know, hey, that sexual act is wrong. That, that's, that person's right. Like, am I, those things, we make those judgments all the time. We teach people how to make those decisions all day long.
Right.
But the kind of judgment where I condemn people, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
The kind of judgments where I think I know the person's motive.
Right.
You went through that light because you were trying to kill someone. Oh, I mean, we do that just flippantly. Like, that guy was trying to kill somebody. It's like, oh, we actually know why he ran the light. He's trying to kill somebody. So, of course, when we do it, we're like, that was accident. Like, how quickly did that light turn?
Right.
I lost it in the sun. I mean, we have all kinds of reasons why we accidentally do something. But when someone else does it, like we just have this idea that they were trying to do something wrong.
Right.
And those kind of things, those are only the Lord knows people's hearts.
Exactly.
Like we don't.
Yeah, that's really good.
So yeah, I think that when we forgive someone, it doesn't mean that we think that what they did was right. Jesus is on the cross and he said, Lord, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing, right?
That's really good.
So, he obviously knows they're sinning.
Yes, that is really good. Okay, next question. Authentically, what does love look like if you don't like the person? Or how do you authentically love somebody if you don't like them, if it's hard to like them?
Well, I mean, the difference between, a believer and an unbeliever according to Jesus, Matthew 5,
Mm-hmm.
is that we love the unlovely.
Yeah.
That we love people who don't love us.
Right.
And we love people who are unlovable.
Right.
Which means that I would say to that person and to myself, and all of us have been in this situation, like Jesus is saying, I'm in you and I so love the world. And therefore you have a source to love someone which isn't human. And when you tap in, when I tap into that source where the unlovely person is loved because I've tapped in to the source of love, not my human love, but his amazing agape love.
Right.
Then that person and everyone around him goes, that guy must know God. That person's not lovable. But when I love the lovely, when I love the lovable, when I like the likable, I mean, everyone's like, everyone else likes the likable.
Right.
So, there's no glory in doing what you can do humanly, what's humanly possible. But there's a ton of glory in, Lord, that person is annoying. But I know that they are a son or a daughter. And I'll tell you another thing that happens, and I've had this experience, and by the way, I'm working on it like everybody else who asks this question, that when you tap into love for someone, the next thing you do is you start to have empathy and compassion for them.
Yeah.
And then you start to ask yourself the question, like, why do they behave like that?
Yeah.
I remember this story. You might remember, it was really a popular story about 10 years ago. This pastor was on a subway in New York, and this man got on with his two young sons. I think they were like, 7 and 8-ish. And the subway bus takes off, and the kids are just like jumping over people and running rowdy, and the man's not doing anything. So finally, the pastor he's super annoyed, and he's like, somebody needs to say something to this guy. And so he just leans over to the guy and puts his hand on his leg and said, sir, do you realize that your kids are like running all over the place and just wreaking havoc? And the man looks up with tears running down his eyes and said, I'm so sorry. We just got back from the hospital and their mother died. And I don't think they're dealing with it any better than I am. And suddenly it's like, I have tons of empathy for two kids who are misbehaving because I understand their situation.
Yeah.
And the challenge is that we meet people in their moment, right? We meet people who meet the homeless person in their moment. And we're like, he's standing out front of the store begging for money. He smells like dog poop, and it's like, it's so easy to like, he doesn't want to let me pass until I give him a quarter, and I'm frustrated because I meet the man in the moment.
Right.
But if I fall in love with the man, how often I begin to hear his journey and with compassion now, because I began with love, now I can tap into even my human compassion as I hear his story.
Yeah. I
remember a transient guy, in Weaverville. He was going through town and he was just trying to find some food. And so, he came, we had an auto parts store, and he just came in, hey man, you got $1? I got a couple bucks. So anyway, Kathy's like, yeah, sure. And she gave him, some money. And she's like, what's going on? Why are you? And the guy was probably about 50 years old, 45 years old. And she's like, yeah. And she got talked to him, and he was an electrician. And we were remodeling our store, and we were actually looking for an electrician. And he goes, yeah, I used to be an electrical contractor. And so she's interacting with them. And then, the short story is, it turns out that he was driving a car. He fell asleep, hit a guy head on. His two daughters and wife were all killed. And he walked away. And he was a contractor with a beautiful family. And that had happened like 2 years before. And it just broke his mind. And he just went off and became homeless. And so it was beautiful. Kathy really took a real strong interest in him, and his glasses were all broken. We got him glasses, and he did work for us. We paid him. But it's like, there you go. Like when you walk in someone's shoes, Like, I don't have judgments about the guy. I don't know what happened if I had done something like that, you know? So I think that this is all where we can love the unlovely. And once we do choose to love them with the love of Jesus, it's funny how we find human compassion as we learn their stories.
Yeah, it's huge. That's really profound. Okay, next question for you. How do we protect our innocence, guard our hearts, and be present at the same time?
We got to give up our judgments. I mean, I say, I'm including me, man. I have to be one of the most impatient people who have ever graced the planet. You know, we have to give up thinking we know why people do what they do. And there's so much grace in protecting our innocence when I give up judging my congressman, my governor. And I can say, you know, I don't like the way my governor manages this, you know, this thing. Maybe it's COVID, or maybe it's social justice issue, or maybe it's, oh gosh, there's so many issues. You know, it's like, I don't agree with my governor on this issue. Well, first of all, you may not have all the information he has or she has. Right. It's possible you do, but you probably don't. So you don't really know for sure what you would do unless you were, you know, I sat in a CDC meeting with a governor of a state. This has been about 8 months ago. And I sat in the CDC briefings in the morning over COVID. That the governor, I was there 2 days, and the governor's like, hey, just mirror me, come to the meeting. So I came to the meeting, and, you know, and he was being briefed, and I was like, oh my gosh, I wish everyone could sit in this room for just 1/2 hour and see what these governors are facing with just COVID. Right. Just COVID just alone. One issue. And I'm like, how does this man get up every morning and even do this? And, you know, this governor does this 6 days a week. The first thing he does, he goes to work from 8 to 9. He's briefed every morning about COVID from different groups, the medical group, the educational group, you know, different groups, the business group. And this guy's trying to keep his city open. I mean, his state open. Right. So, you know, I'm like, I sat in that meeting, I'm like, gained a ton of empathy and compassion for our governors, whether I think they made the right decision after the briefing or not. I mean, the point is that these are not easy decisions to make, you know? Yeah, that's really good. All right. So as a leader, how do you accommodate all the different views and opinions in one church? Feels like we're leading a church. So it's like our goal is to bring the kingdom to people. So, you know, I'm not trying to get everyone to think the same. I'm trying to get everyone to love Jesus, expand the kingdom, and apply the kingdom to their situations. Whether it's the power of God to heal in a situation where someone's sick, or whether it's the power of God to restore a family in the sense that somebody's lost their family or have a broken family or broken marriage or whatever and ever. But it's our job to teach people the Bible and disciple them in the ways of God. But it's not my job to tell you how to vote. Now, let me back up and say this, that if I teach you noble values, and I teach you the scriptures, if it doesn't affect the way you vote and the choices you make, I'm not sure I've done a very good job. But it doesn't mean you're going to vote the same way I vote. Right. If the way that you view how to deal with the social justice issue. Now, I hope everyone leaves church knowing that if there are groups of people, ethnic groups of people that are mistreated, like the African Americans, the Asians, and so on and so forth, the Latinos, I mean, I hope everyone leaves there with compassion. How they vote on those issues and what part they think government plays in that issue may be very different than my perspective. Right. You know, but that they leave with empathy, but the application may be quite different, you know. So I think we have to, you know, what the beauty of Bethel has been a gathering of over 100 nations. Wow. 100 nations. You want to talk about, you know, political diversity. I mean, we're basically a two-party, you might call a three-party system, right? Democrats, Republicans, and independents. But I mean, look at England. Like, I don't know how many parties they have, 9 parties or something. Yeah. You know, Russia, we've got the Russians, which, you know, I don't know how you determine the parties there. And, you know, England, I mean, I said England already, but, you know, you have all these European countries, the Asian countries, the African countries, and all of those folks, they all have political challenges.
Right.
That they're not, lots of them aren't our challenges. So they're not even relevant to what we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and yet those countries have come here from all over the world. Last year we had, we had 76 countries last year.
Wow. You mean in school?
In school. And I think there was like 46 states represented. So it's like, we're talking about like, you know, teaching people about the right and wrongs of politics. I mean, what politics? I mean, we got parliamentary people, we got people coming from, you know, monarchs.
Right.
And, you know, and they're all gathered together.
Yeah.
All tongues of all nations, not all in this case. 76 nations last year, over 100 nations since in the last 22 years. And we have the privilege of training and equipping these people.
Right.
And we're not like, it's not our job to teach them, you know, how to, you know, who to vote for. It might be our job to help them learn how to think heaven, earth, and future present, and to actually be involved in discipling nations. And I think if we can just realize, like, we're, you know, at least Bethel, like, I don't want to speak for other churches. I don't want us to be a political movement. I want us to be a kingdom movement that influences politics. I want us to be a kingdom movement that influences education, that influences family, that influences all realms of culture.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you for taking some time to answer these questions.
Thanks for asking these questions. Yeah. And by the way, you know, when I speak on Sundays, I mean, I'm not the eloquent speaker that stays on script. So, you know, forgive me if there's anybody that I offended unintentionally with sometimes my sense of humor. Somebody wrote and said, you know, when you said about women, you know, going nowhere with their I was like, oh, it was a joke. It was just a joke. It's an inside joke of my wife and I. So I thought I'd bring it to the rest of the family. It doesn't always flow very well, but thanks for loving me and thanks for giving me grace.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you.
God bless.